Hello, and thank you for joining the Writing Center at Illinois Wesleyan today to hear a little bit more about how to write a research paper. We're going to go over a basic how-to guide, offer some suggestions, and hopefully get you on the right track. The first thing we want to talk about today is what we'll cover. So some things we'll discuss are useful starting points for your research and writing. We'll also go over a few composing and editing suggestions, and then finally we'll end with a few resources that we have at Illinois Wesleyan University that you can take advantage of to get the most out of your writing process. So first, we want to give you a couple starting steps. These include going to your discipline-specific librarians. They know all about the databases and all about the other resources, archives, books, periodicals, everything you can think of. They know the ins and outs about the library opportunities at IWU. Then next, you're going to want to craft an annotated bibliography, even if it's not required. If you feel like the annotated bibliography is going to take too much of your time, or maybe you're on a tight deadline, then another option is to at least keep a log of all the sources you're using. I recommend making sure to put all the permalinks in this log. We'll talk a little bit about what those are in a minute. And then finally, you want to also create a sort of outline that allows you to look at the working thesis for your paper, noting that your thesis may change as your research develops. Interestingly, or usefully, perhaps more accurately, the Writing Center at Illinois Wesleyan has documents on how to craft an annotated bib and how to craft an outline on our website at IWU. So if you're going to meet with an IWU librarian, there are a couple things you can keep in mind. First, in the wake of COVID, we actually do virtual meetings that you can find on iwu.mywconline.com. This is also the same website you'll use to schedule meetings with the academic success tutors, the Writing Center tutors, and our philosophy tutors. So it's a one-stop shop for kind of getting some additional support outside the classroom. Another suggestion we have is to make an appointment early to start on the right track. You really can't make an appointment with a librarian after you've done your research, especially if you don't want to have to start all over again in some cases. So it's better to make the appointment early, perhaps even right after you get the prompt and are just starting to get ideas. Another suggestion is to bring any sources you've already found so you can discuss them with the librarian and determine whether or not there are better options out there and whether or not they meet your prompt requirements. So our fourth suggestion is to make sure to have your prompt ready and your rubric if you have one from your professor. We also want to offer a couple tips for crafting your annotated bib. First, copy the permalinks right away so that you don't lose your sources. The permalinks are found on IWU's AIM Library website under Citation. If you click on the source to find out more about it, you can also find the permalinks that way in the center of the page. We also recommend you make sure to note in your annotation how this source will help with your specific research project. And again, that's really key because it's going to let you know where the source is going to plug into that outline we just talked about. And they're going to talk more about in a second. And then finally, you want to craft keywords at the very end of your annotated bib. These should go after the annotation itself, describing how each resource is going to work. The keywords can then provide trends and help you look at themes that'll be useful when you get to the outlining step next. Here we recommend you start with a working thesis. Ideally, what is it that you want your research to prove, or what is it that you think your research will prove? Then you want to craft topic sentences based on the themes you found emerging in your annotation's keywords. And finally, you're going to want to include pieces of evidence, at least the in-text citation info, if not the whole piece of evidence, in your outline, so you have to write less later. That's harder to say than it should be. It's really key to do as much as you can in the outlining stage so that you don't get down to crunch time and aren't able to devote as much time to writing. Next, we want to go over a few composing and editing suggestions for writing a strong research paper. Everyone struggles at different stages of the writing process. Some have trouble with the research stage that we just went over. Some have trouble with the composition stage that we're about to go over. And some struggle at that last minute editing stage. So we're going to cover those two parts next. So first, here are a couple composing suggestions. Don't try to edit as you write. Just get down your ideas first. It's really distracting if you start to go back and edit as you're writing because you interrupt your train of thought. Instead, focus just on getting all of your ideas down and edit at the end. The next thing you want to do is think about the prompt as you write. I always craft a little checklist of things that are requirements for my professor's prompt and then check them off as they emerge in my writing. You can also do this at the very end after you've written a complete draft. Next, you can always ask your professor to see a sample of work other students have submitted if you get stuck. If your professor's uncomfortable giving a sample, which is totally understandable, then you can ask them to read some of your own work during their office hours. That might help you get more accurately on the right track. And finally, we always recommend you visit the Writing Center. There are tons of tutors that will have crafted their own research papers over the years, and so they're going to have their own personalized suggestions for you. Find a tutor that is familiar with your subject or your professor to get that extra know-how. So we also have some editing strategies for you. The first is to read your paper out loud. And if you're uncomfortable reading it out loud, our Writing Center tutors are more than happy to step in and do that for you. You hear different things than you see on the page, so you're likely to catch more mistakes than if you just read it quietly to yourself. Additionally, speaking of catching more mistakes, run spell check in Word, not Google Docs or Pages. Word is more likely to catch far more errors, especially when it comes to grammar, and has the added bonus of explaining why they're errors, unlike Google Docs or Pages. Another option is to always get a second set of eyes on your paper. Be it your professor, a Writing Center tutor, or a friend from the class, they can offer unique and different perspectives and aren't so close to the work as you are. And then this is the final suggestion and the one a lot of people forget, but edit from the end to the beginning. Instead of starting with our intro, as is common when we edit, start with our conclusion and work backwards. See what you catch when you read your conclusion first. It's also a great way to see if you're actually proving the thesis you outlined in your intro. Always, always, always edit from the end to the beginning to have a cohesive, strong paper. We want to just mention finally a few resources we have available for students at IWU to get the most out of their writing process, and in particular, their writing a research paper process. The first is the Research Librarians and Writing Center at IWU. We've already mentioned them, but we want to bring them up again because they are incredibly useful and they're trained to do this work. You can make appointments online at iwu.mywconline.com, and you can actually meet with them online instead of face-to-face. Your professor, they do have office hours for a reason, so use them. Highlight parts of the prompt you don't understand, underline things that you're confused about, ask questions. That's what your professors are there for. Additionally, our YouTube channel also has several writing tutorials, including one called So You Think You're a Bad Writer, that takes you through a more complete writing process from beginning to editing. And finally, our IWU website has a student and faculty resource section. Check those guides out. There are many. There's some from outlining, some for crafting a thesis, some even for grammar like punctuation. In addition to those previously mentioned resources, I want to draw your attention to two new ones. They're both ebooks available at Ames Library, and they both offer a lot of useful perspective on writing research papers. The first is the College Student's Guide to Writing a Great Research Paper that offers tips and tricks to make your work stand out. The second is a student research and report writing, which is really cool because it offers everything from the first stage of topic selection to the end, crafting a complete paper. Thank you for listening to our brief introduction to writing research papers. Please know that all of our tutors love working on research papers with writers, from the starting stage where you're brainstorming ideas all the way through the polishing stage where you're editing a paper you've crafted. If you're not sure what type of learner you are, you should check out our academic skills tutors, which are also available at iwu.mywconline.com from the central drop-down menu. These tutors are trained to help students discover how they learn, and if you discover how you learn, you'll also learn a lot about how you write. Register for an account today, again, at iwu.mywconline.com. Thank you.